The year is 1917. The Western Front has become a graveyard where empires send their sons to die in mud and barbed wire. For 3 years, millions have fallen, and nothing has changed. The lines don't move. The killing never stops. But something is about to shift. The Germans have created a new breed of soldier. They call them Stoßtruppen, storm troopers, elite killers trained in a revolutionary method of warfare that's tearing through Allied lines like a knife through flesh. They move fast, hit hard, and leave nothing but corpses behind. These aren't regular infantry. These are the best Germany has. Handpicked, ruthless, unstoppable. In March 1917, they're being deployed to crush the British and Canadian forces holding Vimy Ridge. High Command is confident. The stormtroopers have never failed. But they're about to meet an enemy they don't understand. An enemy that doesn't fight like the British. An enemy that doesn't take prisoners. An enemy that has been forged in 3 years of absolute hell and has learned to love the darkness. The Canadians are waiting. And when these two forces collide, the German High Command will realize they've made a catastrophic miscalculation. This is the story of what happened when the most elite soldiers in the German army walked into a nightmare they couldn't escape. The Stormtroopers. Let's understand what the Germans created. By 1917, the Western Front is a stalemate. Traditional infantry tactics are suicide. You send waves of men over the top, they get shredded by machine guns, and the line doesn't move an inch. Millions dead. Nothing gained. The German High Command knows they need something different. Something that can break through the Allied trenches without getting massacred. So they create the Stoßtruppen, the Stormtroopers. These aren't conscripts pulled from farms. These are volunteers, the hardest men in the German army. They're given special training that breaks every rule of conventional warfare. Forget the old tactics of massive frontal assaults. Stormtroopers are taught to infiltrate, to move in small, deadly groups, to find weak points and exploit them with brutal efficiency. They carry lighter equipment, MP-18 submachine guns, stick grenades, flamethrowers, sharpened spades for close combat. They're taught to bypass strong defenses and attack command posts, artillery positions, and supply lines. Cut off the head and the body dies. Their training is psychological warfare as much as it is tactical. They're conditioned to be aggressive, to never hesitate, to kill without mercy and move forward without looking back. And it works. Everywhere the stormtroopers are deployed, they succeed. They smash through French positions. They overrun British trenches. They do in hours what regular infantry couldn't do in months. The German High Command is ecstatic. They believe they've created the weapon that will win the war. In early 1917, they set their sights on Vimy Ridge, a massive fortified position held by Canadian forces. Intelligence reports suggest the Canadians are exhausted, undermanned, demoralized. The stormtroopers are given a simple mission: break the Canadian line, take the ridge, end the stalemate. But the intelligence is catastrophically wrong. The Canadians. To understand what the stormtroopers are walking into, you need to understand what the Canadians have become. When Canada entered the war in 1914, they sent volunteers. Farm boys, laborers, men who'd never seen combat. The British command treated them like second-class soldiers. Expendable colonial troops to throw at German positions when they didn't want to waste British lives. And throw them they did. The Canadians were fed into some of the worst battles of the war. Ypres, the Somme, Passchendaele, places where men drowned in mud and died choking on poison gas. Places where survival was measured in hours. But something happened in those hellish battles. The Canadians didn't break. They adapted. They learned. They became something else. By 1917, the Canadian Corps isn't a collection of colonial volunteers anymore. They're a professional killing force with a reputation that makes even British High Command nervous. They've developed tactics that are brutal and effective. Night raids into German trenches. Fast, silent, lethal. They learn to navigate no man's land in complete darkness, cut through barbed wire without making a sound, and kill sentries before they could raise an alarm. Once inside enemy trenches, they don't take prisoners. This isn't cruelty for cruelty's sake. It's survival. Taking prisoners slows you down. Prisoners can raise alarms. Prisoners are a liability. So the Canadians develop a doctrine that's simple and horrifying. You go in fast, you kill everyone you find, you take what intelligence you can, and you're gone before reinforcements arrive. The Germans start calling them shock troops, and worse. There are reports of German soldiers refusing to hold positions near Canadian lines. Morale reports mention fear of the colonials and their night raids. The Canadians also perfect another aspect of warfare: artillery coordination. They don't just shell enemy positions randomly. They map every German trench, every machine gun nest, every artillery battery with obsessive precision. When they attack, their artillery doesn't just bombard. It creates a moving wall of explosions that walks forward with the infantry, pulverizing everything in its path. By spring 1917, the Canadian Corps has been tasked with taking Vimy Ridge. The plan. Vimy Ridge is a nightmare. It's a 7-kilometer escarpment that dominates the entire region. Whoever holds it can see for miles and rain artillery fire on anyone below. The Germans have held it since 1914. They've turned it into a fortress. 3 lines of trenches. Deep bunkers that can survive direct artillery hits. Machine gun nests positioned to create overlapping fields of fire. Barbed wire so thick you can't see through it. The French tried to take it in 1915. They lost 150,000 men and gained nothing. The British tried in 1916. Same result. Bodies piled in no man's land, and the Germans still held the ridge. Now it's Canada's turn. But the Canadian commander, Arthur Currie, isn't going to repeat the same suicidal tactics. He's going to do something unprecedented. Every soldier, from private to general, is going to know the entire plan. Every man is going to have a map showing his objective. Every man is going to rehearse the attack on a full-scale replica of Vimy Ridge built behind Canadian lines. This has never been done before. Conventional military doctrine says you don't tell regular soldiers the big picture. You give them orders and they follow. But Currie understands something the old generals don't. If an officer is killed, the attack doesn't have to stop. Every man knows what to do. Every man can lead. The Canadians spend weeks rehearsing. They practice moving behind a creeping barrage. They memorize the location of every German position. They know exactly how far they need to advance and exactly when. Meanwhile, the artillery begins its work. Not the usual random bombardment, but systematic destruction. Canadian gunners have located 80% of German artillery batteries through aerial reconnaissance and sound ranging. They know where the German guns are, and they're going to destroy them before the infantry even moves. The Germans watch the preparations and aren't worried. They've seen this before. The Allies mass troops shell the line, send men over the top, and get slaughtered. Stormtroopers are positioned to counterattack once the Canadian assault breaks down. High Command is so confident they've already planned how they'll use this victory for propaganda. But they don't understand what's coming. The battle. April 9, 1917. 5:30 a.m. It's still dark, and it's snowing. The Canadians prefer it this way. The weather provides cover. At exactly 5:30, every Canadian gun on the front opens fire simultaneously. Not a rolling bombardment that gives the Germans time to take cover. A sudden, apocalyptic wall of explosions that detonates across the entire German line at once. Over 1,000 artillery pieces firing in perfect coordination. High explosive, shrapnel, gas. The noise is so loud men's ears bleed. The ground shakes like an earthquake. German frontline trenches simply cease to exist. Bunkers collapse. Communication lines are severed. Soldiers who survived the initial barrage are left deaf, disoriented, buried alive. And then the barrage begins to move. A creeping barrage that advances 100 yards every 3 minutes. A moving wall of destruction. Behind it, the Canadians advance. Not in waves, not in lines. In small groups using the shell craters for cover, moving with their artillery like a symphony of violence. German machine gunners who survived the bombardment try to set up their weapons, but before they can fire, the next wave of shells lands on top of them. The few German positions that aren't destroyed are bypassed. The Canadians don't stop to fight strong points. They go around them and keep moving. Follow-up units deal with anything left behind. This is the doctrine the stormtroopers pioneered, but the Canadians have perfected it with brutal efficiency and overwhelming firepower. Within 2 hours, the Canadian Corps has advanced further than any Allied offensive in 2 years. They're through the first German line, through the second, approaching the third. German command sends in the stormtroopers for counterattack. This is what they're trained for. Hit the enemy while they're disorganized, cut them off, roll them back. But when the stormtroopers advance, they don't find disorganized colonials easy to push back. They find soldiers who know exactly where they're supposed to be and exactly what they're supposed to do. The Canadians don't panic. They don't retreat. They dig in and call for artillery support. Within minutes, German counterattacks are being shredded by Canadian gunfire. The aftermath. By the end of April 9th, the Canadians have taken most of Vimy Ridge. By April 12th, it's completely in Canadian hands. The battle that was supposed to be impossible is over in 3 days. German casualties are catastrophic. Over 20,000 killed, wounded, or captured. 4,000 German prisoners are marched back to Canadian lines. For the first time in the war, a major German defensive position has been completely overrun and held. The stormtroopers, the elite force that was supposed to be unstoppable, have been stopped. More than stopped. They've been beaten by soldiers they were told were inferior. The psychological impact on the German army is profound. After Vimy, German intelligence reports become obsessed with the Canadians. They track Canadian movements. They warn units when Canadians are opposite their lines. There are documented cases of German morale collapsing when soldiers learn they're facing the Canadian Corps. The Canadians, meanwhile, have proven something that will define them for the rest of the war. They're not just colonial troops filling out British ranks. They're the spearhead. For the rest of 1917 and into 1918, when the Allies need a position taken, they send the Canadians. Passchendaele, Amiens, the 100 Days offensive that finally breaks the German army. Every major Allied victory in the final year of the war has Canadian forces at the center. The German stormtroopers continue to fight, and they remain elite soldiers. But they never again have the aura of invincibility. Vimy Ridge shattered that. The Canadians didn't just win a battle. They proved that the German tactical revolution could be matched and beaten. They showed that discipline, preparation, and brutal efficiency could overcome even the best soldiers Germany could produce. When the war ends in November 1918, the Canadian Corps has a reputation as the most effective offensive force on the Western Front. They paid for it in blood. 60,000 Canadian casualties at Vimy alone. But they earned something else. A legend that survives to this day. The legend of soldiers who walked into hell and came out the other side as something the enemy learned to fear.